Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a new webinar produced by the European Coalition for Israel. Many of you joined us just a few weeks ago when we were discussing the then upcoming EU elections. Christopher Herrmann was one of the panelists then, and we were trying to discuss and see what would happen during the EU elections from the 6th to the 9th of June. This is a post-election analysis, a discussion, conversation on what we have called the new EU, the new European Union and Israel. Where do we go from here? Looking at what happened, what transpired on June 9th. With me in the program today, we have two gentlemen from Brussels and one from Israel, and myself, Tomas Sandell, from Helsinki. Let me say a special welcome to Yossi Lempkowicz from Israel, who just came back from a trip with journalists, I believe, to the border of Gaza. We will ask you about that trip later in the program. Yossi Lempkowicz, who is a journalist with the European Jewish Press, and also a moderator and host of the European Report, our monthly program from the
Hello.
European Parliament.
Hello, Thomas.
Hello, Yossi. We are also joined by Peter Broz from Brussels. Peter is from Slovakia, and he has worked for a Polish member of European Parliament for the last 5 years, and is hoping to stay on in Brussels and will be involved in EU politics for the next 5 years, 15 years, who knows, and in what capacities. Welcome to the webinar, Peter, as well.
Hello, Thomas. Hello, everyone.
And last but not least, Christopher Herrmann, who joined us in our most recent webinar, and who is a good friend of ECI, like the other panelists, and worked equally in the European Parliament for the last 5 years for a German MEP. Welcome also to you, Christopher Herrmann.
Thank you.
Perhaps if I would, before we go into discussing the EU elections, Yossi, it looks exotic and interesting, your picture and your background. You are in a bus in Israel. You were not even sure if you would be able to join this webinar, because as I understand it, you've been hosting European journalists for the last few days. Could you just give us a little update on what exactly you are doing and what the mode is in Israel right now?
Absolutely. I am here in Israel with a group of around 20 journalists from Europe and the US. The first time that we are combining the two from mainstream media in Europe, in the various countries, and we are here in Israel for a press trip around the war in the south and the war in the north, and the situation in general in Israel. Today, I just came back from the border with Gaza. We had a visit. We visited Kibbutz Nir Oz, which is one of the kibbutzim that was most affected by the the Hamas terrorist attack on October 7th. Kibbutz Nir Oz is a very small community, I would say not far from Rafiah, not far from the Keren Shalom crossing, and they had like 400 residents, and more than 100 were killed by the terrorists. So we saw the devastation, the houses, burned houses, and everything. The life. There's no more life in the kibbutz, and the resident that we met and that briefed us, she told us that they probably will need to rebuild completely the kibbutz, the houses, and this could take almost 3 years. And of course, not all residents want to come back, but this is a question, people they change their mind. Depends on their mood, and because also that most residents from the southern communities bordering Gaza, they know live as refugees in their own countries, They are in hotels around the country, and the same for the north. Yesterday we went to the border of Lebanon, and the same there. All the kibbutzim, the moshavim, they don't have any more residents. They are living in hotels. So the situation is not easy for them, and not easy for Israel in general. And on the top of this, you have still the issue of the hostages. Still 120 hostages in the hands of Hamas and other terrorists in Gaza. So tomorrow we are going to the hostage square in Tel Aviv to meet with families of hostages. This is the press trip. I think it's very important to bring journalists to see on the ground what's happening, to have the direct testimonies of people. We went also, which is very interesting, we visited a military base where the unit, the Yahalom unit is specialized in the activities of terror tunnels. So they are still, of course, active in Gaza. And we had a off-the-record briefing with the commander. This is mainly what we do, and we'll have also briefings by experts.
Sorry, thank you, Yossi, for making time to be on our webinar, knowing that you have such a full program, but we appreciate everything you do. And I think it's an encouragement for the people of Israel that you bring these journalists to the country at this time. Let us now then look back on what happened on June 9th. As many of you know, we were in the United States when the election results came in. But Yossi was very quick in doing one of the first interviews about the election results, which I later quoted myself in using that in our press release, on issues that we will discuss more in detail in this webinar. But if I start with a round of questions to all of you, starting with Peter, looking at the election results, is there anything that came as a surprise? What is your overall assessment on what happened on June 9th? What is the message, the political message of the European electorate? If we start with you, Peter.
Yes, so my understanding is that voters sent a clear message of dissatisfaction. In general, what we can see is that what was commented in many ways, a move towards the right in the European Parliament. The speculations have been there for weeks in the mainstream media. We could see different scenarios, and we could see overall atmosphere of threat. Something new is coming. I think in the end, the message is clear. At the same time, what we can see, and I hope we will discuss this, the ability to consolidate and to try to make something reasonable on the right is failing, and we can see different attempts. So my very first impression would be people gave a very solid feedback towards some of the policies, namely the Green Deal, the migration policy, and so on. It's not clear if the elected politicians will have the capacity to do something about that.
Yes, thank you, Peter, and we will certainly come back to those questions. But if we come to you, Christopher, what is your assessment looking at the whole European picture now?
Yeah, first of all, I can totally agree that this election was actually a sign of dissatisfaction, of discontent in many countries. There is a shift to the right, there's a shift to populist parties, but we can also see that this election was again not a pan-European election. We have actually 27 separate national elections with totally different backgrounds, and the question how the European election was going on was always a question if the people in this country was satisfied with the national government or not. And of course, there are some trends. Of course, right-wing populists won in many countries, but there are also some countries that make it different. Tomas, you know, in Finland, in Sweden, in Denmark, in Nordic countries, it was totally the other way around. The right-wing populists lost, in Finland especially, and the far left and the Green parties won a lot. So totally different to the trend in the rest of the countries. So it's always about national politics. We can see that again. But of course, migration is a big issue. The voters sent a clear message that migration is the biggest problem Europe has to solve. The national government and the European Union has to solve. That Green Deal is not important anymore to the people. The Greens lost, the centrist parties, especially the Liberals lost, who actually cared for this Green Deal. So this is actually the result of this election.
Thank you, Christopher. And it's absolutely true that in our Nordic countries, we had a very different scenario, which perhaps also can be explained by something you mentioned, that these are domestic elections. The opposition always does much better in these type of European elections than those in government, because this is an opportunity for those in the opposition to express their dissatisfaction. Whereas it's often more difficult to mobilize the governing parties. But over to you, Yossi. You're not only in Israel, but you are a journalist based in Brussels. You're a Belgian nationality, but you have a pan-European outlook. What are your conclusions after these elections?
Well, I agree that that there is a clear shift to the right, be the soft right and I would say the hard right in several countries. But I see it also maybe in terms of, and I'm sure that we will discuss it later. I see it in terms of EU-Israel relations that as a positive sign, because I think that all the forces, political forces that were very critical to Israel, even hostile, I would say, I'm speaking about the left, the Greens, and the extreme left, they lost. So hopefully the new European Parliament, and even in some countries, even like the most anti-Israel in Europe, as member states like Belgium, Spain, we saw a shift to the right, and all the parties that are very critical for Israel, they lost. So hopefully the next European Parliament will be more pro-Israel, and yes, and I think when you see now that the liberals are losing a lot, and they will be only the fourth group in the European Parliament, and the conservative, the rightist conservative will take the third rank in the European Parliament. This is encouraging in terms of EU-Israel relations. I mean, in general, and maybe this will tone down, I would say, all the the adversary, the hostile parties to Israel.
Thank you, Yossi, and I concur with your assessment. And there was even an article written in Tablet magazine which made this point, which I hadn't studied so much in details, that the fact that in our Israel ranking, which you, by the way, can find on our website, in this ranking, those countries who turned out to be the most hostile towards Israel were the countries who did very poorly in the elections. And these are especially the extreme left in Spain, which has put a lot of pressure on the current socialist prime minister to recognize a Palestinian state. So although we may say that these were not an election where Israel was in any way the most important questions, but it was a question nevertheless: how would Europe relate to the crisis in the Middle East, which will affect us in one way or another? We're also talking about terrorism and security, and these are questions which are clearly related to the issues that we are discussing. We are also taking questions as we speak. So I'm looking at the screen from time to time. There is a question to say, how will this affect EU relations to Israel? I think instead of giving a very short answer, I think the whole webinar, of course, is trying to analyze what this will mean for EU-Israel relations. But as I said in my interview with you, Yossi, it can hardly get any worse if we look at the Israel ranking, with those parties which are most favorable to Israel are the ones that clearly have been victorious in the elections, and those who are the most hostile have lost many seats. But it's more complex than that, and we will try to explain that more in this webinar. But Christopher, coming back to Germany, which of course is the largest EU member state, and some would say the most important, how would you, if we look at Germany now for a few minutes, and not the EU as a whole, what were the results from Germany?
The German results were actually similar to what we experience in most Central European countries. So the Christian Democrats, the EPP party in Germany, won the election clearly. It's in opposition currently on the national level, but they won it. Big surprise actually is that the number two in this election is the AfD, the far-right party, which made it to become number two with 15%, which was just a few years ago totally unbelievable. In Germany, traditionally after World War II, had a totally stable political system. New parties never made to get anything. It was always hard for new parties to enter the political stage. Now it totally changed. And we saw that the Social Democrats lost, the Liberals lost, the Greens lost extremely, because in the last years the Greens in Germany was on some kind of a high for years. They won one election after the other. This stopped now and just turned totally to the other way around. They lost many percent and many seats here in Brussels. So again, the German result is also a sign of discontent, of deep discontent, which we experienced actually in the last years in Germany. The current center-left government is not supported even by their own members anymore. They are disappointed. The Social Democrats are actually not able to get their own electorate anymore. The Greens also actually, so it's actually the question is, we currently have in Germany, will there be a snap election, which is actually somehow a scandal, because snap elections in Germany after World War II were very rare. Actually, there were only 3 snap elections in 70 years. So even the discussion now that one of the parties could crash the coalition, the Liberals most probably, and to provoke a new election this year, 1 year ahead of the actual election date, is a sign that the political system in Germany is totally changing. And then, of course, as largest country in the European Union, It's will always affect the European politics. And the other thing which I actually would like to mention is if you look on the map, fortunately we cannot show it here with the results concerning the strongest party in the German districts or counties, as you want to tell it, you could think about it is a map from an old school book, from an old atlas from the 80s, because it's exactly the borders of former Western and former Eastern Germany. In the West, the CDU, the Conservatives won, and the East, the AfD, the right-wing populists won. And it's actually shocking that after 30 years after unification, the country is totally divided and in two parts, moving actually in totally different directions.
Christopher, can you remind us and the audience, if I remember correctly, there will be elections anyhow next year in Germany, is that true?
Next year, not in autumn 2025, normally.
Okay. So besides France and UK, we are also looking at political changes in Germany. But speaking about individual countries, Slovakia, Peter, where you are from, made headline news in a very particular way just weeks before the elections with the assassination attempt on your prime minister. And how did this affect the election results in Slovakia, and where are we at now in Slovakia when it comes to the future of this current government, and where do we go from here? If anyone can make some intelligent comments on what happened in Slovakia, that would be you, Peter. So we are eager to hear from you.
Yeah, I hope I could. Listen, the assassination attempt was a breaking point in the nation. In contrast to Germany, we are a young democracy with very little experience. The political field is very dynamic, changes all the time. I think we're just going from, the phase of adolescence, in the deepest stage of puberty right now as a democracy. I think what happened to the prime minister, whose survival was really a miracle because he received a few shots from a very small distance. So it was a real miracle. He recovered so quickly. He's now at home. It has a mobilizing, or it had a mobilizing effect on the voters. Slovakia used to be when it came to election turnout, Slovakia was one of the worst. Now we have over 30% of voters coming up to the polling stations, which is something new. But unfortunately, in the end, what happened is that in these elections, we saw the country is really polarized and it's getting worse. And with the exception of one MEP, we lost the political center. So we got the government parties of Smer and Hlas, who say of themselves they are of the left. It's really hard to define it like that, but let's say. Then you got progressives, very pro-European, but at the same time with very aggressive policies. And then you got extremists, and that's it. The center basically collapsed. And it will be really hard to restore this situation where you have someone in the middle. So I don't think this is something that is also happening on the European level, but here in Slovakia, you can really see that something is wrong and we have to do something about it. Otherwise, we will have 2 or maybe 3 camps, and it will be impossible to talk to each other. And the assassination attempt was basically a good sign that something is wrong with the society and the way how the country is led. That the leadership is not okay.
So Peter, I mentioned in my introductory remarks that you were probably remain involved in EU politics for the next 15, 20 years, and we put our hope in you that you will run in the next election and provide a solid center moderate voice into EU politics from Slovakia. We spoke about Germany, we spoke about Slovakia. I'd like to turn to Yossi and speak about Belgium. Belgium, of course, has been leading the or have had the EU presidency for the last 6 months almost, and will give over to Hungary in a few days from now. But what happened in Belgium was also interesting in a similar way as to what happened in France, that as a result of the EU election, the Belgian government decided or the prime minister decided to step down, and there will be new elections. What are your thoughts on the situation in Belgium on the one hand, but also the fact that as of next Monday, Hungary, a country which is probably the most pro-Israel within the whole European Union, will be chairing the European Council? Yossi.
Yeah, first, in Belgium, in fact, on the 9th of June, there were 2 elections. One is European elections. Then you had also federal elections. And both we saw, of course, that the coalition parties lost a lot of voters. And the rightist, like in Flanders, the NVA, the Nationalist Party, won the elections. And in the French-speaking part of Belgium, the liberals, the Mouvement Réformateur, the liberals, which is a bit different from France, because they are also considered in France Macron as a liberal, but more maybe centrist. But they won a great victory. So there will be a new government. So the Prime Minister De Croo, who was considered also very anti-Israel, like the Spanish Prime Minister Sanchez, and he resigned immediately after the vote, the election. And there will be a new government, probably led by Bart De Wever, but because he is on the federal level, Bart De Wever, who is now trying to get a coalition between his party, the liberals, French-speaking liberals, and the Christian Democrats in Flanders. So it will be a complete different politics, because there will be no Greens, no Flemish socialists. And the same as in different countries, it's because of immigration, security, the green the environment policy. Also in Brussels, the same, with the rules that they decided, it was very unpopular, and this brought the liberals to the power. So it will be completely different. And Belgium, you said, chair the last 6 months the EU Council of Ministers, the rotating Council of Ministers. So it will be succeeded by Hungary on July 1st. And this, of course, is a great opportunity, I would say, for Israel. This will be a turning point, surely. And Israel is, it's in fact, Israel is waiting this Hungary chairmanship to have, to reply to an invitation by the EU to an EU-Israel Association Council that will discuss the Gaza situation, but other issues. It's waiting the Hungary presidency rather than having the Belgian. So it's an opportunity, I think, to to improve Israel's position within the EU.
Thank you, Yossi. That's very interesting. Christopher, I'm one of the central issues that we are bringing up time and time again is the some call it polarization, others call it radicalization of EU politics. As we said, that the center, political center, is losing ground. You were one of the first who really warned about the situation in Germany. We have spoken about that in Brussels many times, and then in the webinar. What can you tell us about the extreme right and extreme left after the elections on June 9th? What did happen, and what are the numbers?
Yeah, basically, especially the far right, the extreme right, gained some percentage. The far left also different in different countries, but for example, in Germany, a new far left party appeared on the stage, founded just half a year ago. Now already received 7%. The party of Mrs. Wagenknecht, I mentioned it already last time. A left-wing nationalist party, so she combines extreme position from the left in social economic issues with far-right positions on migration. She supports the Kremlin, she supports China, she supports Hamas, and she made it to get 7% in the national level already. And it's similar in some other countries. You can see it in France, where the center is shrinking. The Gaullists actually almost disappeared. The Macronists lost a lot, and we can see that far left and far right are actually the winners of this election. And tomorrow morning, we will most probably see the constitution, the launch of a new political group here in the parliament, of the extreme right. As that many probably noticed, the AfD has been expelled from the ID group because the German right-wing party was too extreme for Le Pen and others. And they made it now, apparently, somehow, in contrast to what most of us expected, to find enough partners to found a new extreme right group with some Eastern European right-wing extremists, I have to say, so from Slovakia, for example, from Poland, from Bulgaria, actually so far totally untouchable parties. Even for the right-wing populists, they are now on the stage, and as far as it looks, they will make it to get a known new group, and that would be the most extreme, right-wing extreme political group in the parliament for decades. So it's actually, we can see that this it's more than splinter groups, as we can see they're organizing themselves. On the left as well, we have some left-wing extremists in the parliament who've been re-elected. They're also well networked, so it's actually very dangerous to the system.
So we have some breaking news actually in this webinar, Christopher. I was not aware of this. So if there's journalists watching this, or Politico, you can quote us. But this is very interesting, as you say, and it brings us back to really the core of how we presented this webinar. The rise of the far right, is this a threat to Israel and European Jewry? So let us focus on that. And one of the questions here, and just to make it clear that there is a question about domestic politics in Israel, which we will not deal with in this webinar. We will focus on Europe. But one of the questions is really this: is the enemy of my enemy really a friend? And the person who poses the question speaks about France and Marine Le Pen. And this was, of course, one of the unexpected outcome of the EU elections, that France is suddenly could be tilting either to the extreme right or the extreme left. But if we take this, starting with Yossi, you know, in your capacity as following this from European Jewish press, what is your reading about the situation in France? How And maybe I can throw in here a quote from Serge Klarfeld, the equivalent of Simon Wiesenthal in France, who came out with a very remarkable quote to say that if the choice was between the extreme left and the extreme right, that would be an easy choice for him. He would go with National Rally. How representative is this for the mainstream Jewish vote in France? Is there any way, Yossi, of trying to get an answer to that difficult question?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, since several years, the Jewish community in general was very cautious in its on its position regarding the former Front National of Jean-Marie Le Pen, and then afterwards the Rassemblement National, National Rally of Marine Le Pen, because you know that the history of this party, you know, with many I would say neo-Nazi figures in the party, also the legacy of Jean-Marie Le Pen with his anti-Semitic statements. So I think the Jewish community is rather cautious today, but with Marine Le Pen being surely not anti-Semitic, and the new, I would say, leader of the Rassemblement National, Jordan Bardella, as a future potential prime minister, they see maybe a change. There is, I think, a change within the community, and you mentioned Klarsfeld as an example, because I'm sure that Klarsfeld at the time would never say that he would choose the Rassemblement National. But today, with the other, I would say, the other camp, which is the leftist and extreme left, do you know that they united in a call Front Populaire, Popular Front, all the socialists, the communists, the extreme left. So I think between the two, he's right. There is a clear choice, especially because I think that a lot of Jews, maybe until now, they voted mostly for Macron also as a centrist, you know. But they were, I think, disillusioned by his policy, and also regarding Israel. Look at what he said, what he did. Sometimes he changed a lot his position. So I think probably there will be some consideration within the Jewish community to vote for the Rassemblement National. But as I said in the beginning, but I mentioned that for Israel, it's a good thing that hard right and also soft right parties won in Europe. But you have also to discuss it country by country, because all the situation is different from country to country. And also you have to separate the issue of Israel and the Jewish issues in Europe. For example, the Shrita, the ritual slaughter, you know that Rassemblement National and some other hard right parties, they are against ritual slaughter, they are against the circumcision. So I think the Jewish community is also cautious on these issues, and it's right, they should be. Also Israel was over the last years very cautious about these parties, the hard right parties, when they wanted to have relations, but maybe things will change in the future.
Thank you, Yossi. I thought that was a very interesting and thought through reply. And I think, again, coming back to what Christopher said, the fact that there will be a real extreme right group in the European Parliament will make it easier for the Israeli government as well to try to see how they can relate to, certainly to ECR, but I also think to IND, where you have the Italian Lega as one of the, or have been one of the main parties, and with the departure of AFD, I think there is a clear, people are choosing camps in a way that we haven't seen previously. But if we go back to talking now with Peter and Christopher, trying to define what we mean by hard right or far right or extreme right. And I have said sometimes that in many political circles, someone like Mother Teresa would be considered a fascist today. And that only shows how unprecise our vocabulary is when it comes to defining something politically. And maybe for the time being, it's exactly as Yossi says, we have to look country by country, political party by political party, but also understand that we'll never get to a situation where a particular party will not have extreme elements, members. For me, the defining question is, how are these elements people dealt with? And without mentioning any names, there are good examples how these far-right parties today are expelling members that make anti-Semitic statements, and they are very, very sensitive. And I think this is a good development. But Peter, if we start with you, are you an extreme right? Are you an extremist?
I hope I'm not. I despise these labels just as you described them, because I think they are misleading. And I don't think this is a natural language. I think it's intentional, because it gives whoever is in the opposition to basically put you into one, box, into one place, and then whatever you do, it's extreme right. At the same time, a little disclaimer: yes, I work in the ECR environment, so I might be biased. So I'm not saying I'm totally objective here. One important comment I would like to say, actually two. The first one is regards to your comments about it cannot get any worse with the EU-Israel relations. I think it can get worse. First, because we see that the West European political parties are struggling to, gain trust of their voters, and they are naturally leaning towards the extreme left, or let's say the extremists on the left side, who are now more than often linked with anti-Semitism. And we can see that in France, and I think the same sort of sentiment or strategy will be practiced in other countries, such as Belgium or Spain or others. And we can see this also, the same political development in the United States, where the current administration is sort of trying to be strategically ambiguous, on one hand supporting Israel, on the other hand being sympathetic to the so-called protesters, very aggressive, very pro-Hamas. And I'm afraid when the mainstream parties in the Western Europe will feel threatened and they will see their numbers are going down, they will naturally try to pull some voters from the left, and they don't mind, any resemblance of anti-Semitism. They will sort of, gloss it over, and they will try to speak about, two-state solution, or they will try to speak about ceasefire and, the peace process. But at the very core, they will integrate this sort of people we don't want to see in European politics. And my second comment is, I agree with you that the only way how we can resolve the issue of anti-Semitism anywhere is functional political party, party with structure, party that is based on first rules, then traditions, and so on. Because what we see right now in the European Parliament, a lot of new MEPs coming from parties that didn't exist six months ago. And these are one-issue parties. Sometimes you don't really know their political stances, you don't know their direction, they don't know what to do. I think this is the threat. So let's go back to the system of political parties with a structure where you can where you can exercise political discipline. And this is what happened in the past. I remember this was 2015 or 2016. Also a member of ECR, well-renowned, she was kicked off of ECR because of her comments. And there was very little discussion. There was no comparing or no trying to relativize it. It was simply, this was anti-Semitic, see you. So I think this is the way how to move forward to have a strict discipline in the parties.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. And before I give over to Christopher, I would perhaps, first I accept your assessment, it can get worse. And so I have to correct myself there, sadly. But also to say, looking at the US elections, that's of course not the topic of this webinar, but what we see in the US, we also see in Europe, and that is an extreme populist, almost conspirational right wing, with famous people with millions and millions of followers on YouTube, who clearly have an audience and are getting very dangerously anti-Israel and anti-Semitic. These are, so, I think it's always good to make this point clear. I'm concerned what I see on parts of what we call the extreme right, as well as on the extreme left. Christopher, can you define, where do we draw the line? What is acceptable politically? If there are, we're talking about different ideologies. Politically, we have done so as political scientists. We say, political left, socialism, the center, and then political right, market economy. Basically, how would you? Where are the red lines as to what is not acceptable when we look at the far right now in particular?
Yeah, as you already mentioned, the definition of extremism is, of course, always subjective. Some positions which are seen liberal in Poland or Romania would be seen as extremist and radical in Sweden, for example. So actually, it's always very subjective. But I would say that is actually the main red line, which really is between these extremist parties on the far right and the far left and the more moderate ones, even the populist ones, is that these parties are not only criticizing the current policy, the current politics on the national level, the EU, which is absolutely legitimate in a democracy. They question, they criticize, they attack the system itself as democracy. They oppose parliamentarism, they oppose democracy. And this is actually, that's definitely the red line. And when you look at this new group, most probably founded tomorrow, that is actually, I would say, the cleavage between the ID group, ECI on the one side, and this new group, because all of these parties who seem to assemble there actually are not just criticizing the EU, or to change and reform the EU, or want to change the current migration politics. They want to change the whole system. They want an authoritarian system. And I think this is the cleavage we have to look at. And of course, it exists on the far left as well. There are some far left socialists, of course, but they accept at least as one single point of this basement of democracy. But we have also some MEPs here in the parliament who oppose even this. And I think on both sides of the political spectrum, we have to draw the line exactly there.
Yeah, I think that was,
yeah. Sorry. And on the other side, as Peter always mentioned, there are coming many new parties now. And it's a phenomenon of the whole Western world, actually, that everything is changing. And we have, for example, in Spain, a party which was founded just a couple of months ago. The name is The Party Is Over. They made it to get 4 seats, I think, here. No one knows what it stands for, even for me as political scientist. Talk to a Spanish political scientist, he can't still not say if it's right-wing or left-wing. Can't say, because they're just against everything, and they made it to get 4% just in a few months. And that's actually not the only one. We have some experience like this in other countries.
Yeah. Gentlemen, we have more or less 8 minutes left to bring this to a close, something which is very important. The composition of the European Parliament in itself, of course, is not decisive as to how EU relations to Israel will develop. This will have to do with the who is in the EU leadership, who is the president of the European Commission, the European Parliament, the Council of Ministers, and who is the High Representative for foreign policy. What are your thoughts? Our government leaders will meet this Thursday, if I'm not mistaken, and chances are that decisions could be made. Then we know that von der Leyen is proposed to continue as president of the European Commission. The same with Roberta Metsola. And for the Council of Ministers, the former Portuguese Prime Minister, Mr. Costa. And as for High Representative, at the moment, Estonian current Prime Minister Kallas, Kaja Kallas. What are your thoughts, if you just take a 1-2 minute assessment on what we are likely to see, or even what you would like to see personally? If we start with Peter.
Yes, I will try to be brief. I cannot offer any names, unfortunately. My assessment is that the ideas or the wishes of the elites, the EU elites here in Brussels, might crash very soon. We are waiting for the vote on the 16th or the week of the 15th of July in Strasbourg, where the candidate for the Commission president is Ursula von der Leyen. For me, it's not that clear. I mean, it's presented as a deal done, as something which will pass, but just be reminded that in the last vote 5 years ago, when she was elected as a president of the European Commission, she passed by 9 votes, as I remember. So this time it can be even narrower, or the whole structure can simply crash. So we may also expect a very hot summer in terms of political process, because everything will need to restart from scratch. That's number one. And number two, my wish list, my personal wish list would be, and again, I'm biased. This would be a person from Central or Eastern Europe with a better understanding of, the communist experience, a better understanding of, developing Eastern countries, with a greater appreciation of transatlantic relation, and with a more clear foreign policy, not this ambiguous yes and no, also towards Israel.
I back you 100%, Peter, on that, and I'll even give in on my Finnish preferences to say I'd rather go with Central Eastern Europe. What about you, Yossi?
Well, briefly, yes, we have to wait, of course, until the summit this week on Thursday and Friday to see what the EU leaders will decide. But of course, my preference go, because we are speaking about different top jobs, but I'm speaking about the EU High Representative. Of course, Estonian Prime Minister Kallas would be much better than what we have today, Joseph Borrell, who have proven to be more and more hostile to Israel. Look at this last statement yesterday after the Foreign Affairs Council when he said that there is a Israel is provoking famine in Gaza. There is no trucks entering the Gaza Strip for humanitarian aid. I think it's time for, as you said, someone from Central and Eastern Europe to become EU Foreign Affairs chief. After we had Mogherini, we had Ashton. So it's time for a better EU High Representative in terms of EU-Israel relations.
Yes. Christopher, you get the last word on that issue.
Yeah, just to mention, I think also it's after many years of socialist high representatives, I think it's time for someone from the other political part of the other political spectrum. And I think it's very important that the EU and the heads of national governments and also the EU Commission understand that this election was a warning, and the people are not convinced of how it goes on in the EU politics. The Green Deal crashed. That's actually one of the result of these elections. And I think Brussels must finally listen to the people, because otherwise in 5 years it will be much worse.
Yes, maybe I'll just add my thoughts on that. I think I mentioned in the last webinar that the most stable democracy at the moment seems to be Italy. And Italy was exceptional, probably one of the very few countries where the government made such significant gains in terms of new seats in the European Parliament. Still, the Prime Minister of Italy is not part of these three political groups who are deciding the future of Europe and these appointments. And speculations are, of course, that Prime Minister Meloni will make this an issue this Thursday and Friday. That now with and when we say ECR, that is the Conservative and Reformist group, that is now the third largest political group in the European Parliament. And I think logically they should have more of a say when these positions are being decided. Anyway, thank you, gentlemen, for spending an hour with us. Something which we did not discuss, and I know it's equally important, is who will win the European Championship in football. And here I think we have three good contenders: Germany, Belgium, and Slovakia. Finland, unfortunately, did not qualify. But
Belgium Belgium is playing Ukraine tomorrow.
Okay. So we know whom to cheer for. But that will be the topic for another webinar, another channel for that matter. It's not European Coalition for Israel items to discuss football, but certainly anything to do with EU-Israel relations, how we can combat anti-Semitism, how we can promote good relations between Europe and Israel, and we will continue to do so. Please do follow us on social media. Go to our website where you find our monthly European reports, which Yossi Lempkowicz is hosting. And also this webinar will be recorded. So you can, if you think that this was an interesting discussion, you can pass it on to your friends. So from me in the studio here in Helsinki, I say thank you again to our panelists and to our audience, and hope to see you again soon in another interesting webinar. Thank you and goodbye.